My girlfriend cheated on me during COVID. Part 1. The beginning of the pandemic. The world was just beginning to grapple with the surreal reality of a global pandemic. COVID-19 was spreading like wildfire, and my life, like everyone else's, was turned upside down. I was working from home, navigating the new normal, and trying to stay connected with loved ones despite the physical distance. Isabella, my girlfriend of 3 years, and I had always prided ourselves on our strong relationship. We met in college, and our bond grew deeper with each passing year. We shared dreams, fears, and a mutual understanding that made me believe we could face any challenge together. The pandemic, however, brought challenges I never anticipated. At first, it was actually nice to spend more time together. We turned our small apartment into a cozy sanctuary, filled with home-cooked meals, movie marathons, and late-night conversations. The outside world seemed distant and scary, but as long as we had each other, I felt we could get through anything. As the weeks turned into months, however, the strain of the lockdown began to take its toll. We both started to feel the pressure of constant proximity. Little arguments over trivial things became more frequent. I brushed them off, thinking they were just a result of the stress everyone was under. But looking back, I realized they were the early warning signs of what was to come. Isabella started spending more time on her phone and social media. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone was looking for ways to stay connected during the isolation, but there were moments when she'd quickly put her phone away when I walked into the room, or she'd get defensive if I asked who she was chatting with. I tried to ignore the growing knot in my stomach, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I noticed she was distracted. Her eyes kept flicking to her phone, and she seemed to be miles away. I paused the movie and gently asked, "Is everything okay, Bella?" She looked startled, as if I had caught her doing something she shouldn't. "Yeah, everything's fine. Why do you ask?" "I don't know," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "You just seem a bit distant lately. Is there something on your mind?" She sighed and put her phone down. "It's just everything, the pandemic, being stuck inside all the time. It's overwhelming." I nodded, understanding her feelings completely. "I get it. It's been hard on both of us. But we'll get through this together, right?" She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Of course." As the days went on, the tension continued to build. I tried to be more attentive and supportive, hoping it would help alleviate some of her stress. We started doing virtual hangouts with friends, played online games, and even tried new hobbies together. But no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then came the night that changed everything. Part 2. The Revelation. It was a Friday night, and we had decided to have a virtual game night with some friends. Isabella seemed more animated than she had in weeks, laughing and joking around. I was relieved to see her in high spirits. Maybe things were starting to turn around. After the game night, Isabella said she was tired and went to bed early. I stayed up for a while, scrolling through social media and catching up on the news. As I was about to head to bed, I noticed her phone on the kitchen counter. She had left it unlocked, and a message notification popped up on the screen. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but curiosity got the better of me. I glanced at the message. It was from someone named Mark. The message read, "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." My heart dropped. I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me. Who was Mark? What did he mean by "last night was amazing"? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my trembling hands. I tapped on the message thread, and what I saw confirmed my worst fears. There were dozens of messages between Isabella and Mark, filled with flirtation and intimacy. They had been seeing each other behind my back. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, had been cheating on me. My mind raced with questions and emotions. Why had she done this? How long had it been going on? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? Part 3. The Confrontation. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was a storm of anger, hurt, and confusion. I kept replaying the messages in my head, trying to make sense of it all. When morning came, I knew I couldn't avoid the confrontation any longer. Isabella woke up, looking refreshed and oblivious to the turmoil raging inside me. I waited until she had her coffee before I spoke. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She looked at me, her expression wary. "About what?" "About Mark," I said, watching her face closely. Her eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Finally, she whispered, "How did you find out?" "It doesn't matter how I found out," I said, my voice tight with anger. "What matters is that you lied to me. You cheated on me." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she reached out to touch my hand, but I pulled away. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." How long has this been going on? I demanded. Since the beginning of the lockdown, she admitted. I met him online and we started talking. It was just innocent at first, but then it escalated. Innocent? I echoed, feeling a surge of bitterness. There's nothing innocent about cheating on your partner. I know, she said, tears streaming down her face. I know I messed up. But please, let me explain. I crossed my arms, giving her a chance to speak. I've been feeling so trapped and lonely, she said, her voice shaking. The pandemic, being stuck inside all the time. It was driving me crazy. Mark was just someone to talk to, someone who made me feel less alone. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did, I said coldly. And now what? What do you expect me to do with this? She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I don't know, I thought maybe we could work through this. Work through this? I repeated, incredulous. How am I supposed to trust you again after what you've done? I don't know, she whispered. I don't know if you can, but I want to try. Part 4. The proposal. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I couldn't look at Isabella without feeling a surge of anger and betrayal. Every time I saw her on her phone, I wondered if she was talking to Mark. The trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship was shattered. One evening, as we sat in silence at the dinner table, Isabella spoke up. I've been thinking, she said hesitantly, about us, about how we can move forward. I looked at her, waiting for her to continue. I know I've hurt you, and I know things can't go back to the way they were, but maybe we can find a new way to be together, a way that works for both of us. What are you suggesting? I asked warily. She took a deep breath. An open relationship? I stared at her, stunned. You want to be with other people? No, she said quickly. Not exactly. I mean, I still want to be with you. But maybe we can both have the freedom to explore other connections. It doesn't have to mean the end of us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So let me get this straight. You want to cheat on me with my permission? It's not cheating if we're both okay with it, she said softly. It could be a way to rebuild trust, to be honest with each other about our needs and desires. I shook my head, feeling a mix of disbelief and anger. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I want to share you with anyone else. I understand, she said, tears in her eyes. I just thought it might be a way for us to stay together, to work through this. I didn't know what to say. The idea of an open relationship was completely foreign to me. Part of me wanted to reject it outright, to walk away and never look back. But another part of me, the part that still loved Isabella despite everything, wondered if this could be a way to save our relationship. Part 5. The decision. I spent the next few days wrestling with my thoughts and emotions. I confided in a close friend, seeking advice and perspective. What would you do if you were in my shoes? I asked him. It's a tough situation, he said thoughtfully. But ultimately, it's about what you want and what you're comfortable with. If you think an open relationship could work, and if you're willing to give it a try, then maybe it's worth considering. But if it feels wrong to you, don't force yourself into it. His words echoed in my mind as I tried to sort out my feelings. I loved Isabella, and part of me wanted to fight for our relationship. But the idea of an open relationship felt like a betrayal of everything I believed in. Finally, I decided to have an honest conversation with Isabella. I've thought about what you said, I told her, and I need to be honest with you. I don't know if I can do this. An open relationship goes against everything I believe in. I don't want to share you with anyone else. She nodded, looking resigned. I understand. I just wanted to offer a solution, a way for us to stay together. I appreciate that, I said softly, but I think we need to take a step back. We need to figure out what we really want, both individually and as a couple. Part 6. The separation. In the end, we decided to take a break from each other. We agreed to give ourselves some space to think and reflect. Isabella moved in with a friend for a while, and I stayed in our apartment, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The separation was painful, but it was also necessary. It gave me time to process my emotions and to consider what I wanted for my future. I realized that I couldn't go back to the way things were. The trust had been broken, and no matter how much I loved Isabella, I couldn't see a way to rebuild it. After a few weeks, we met up to talk. It was a difficult conversation, filled with tears and regrets. I love you, I told her, but I don't think we can make this work. There's too much hurt, too much damage. She nodded, her eyes filled with sadness. I understand. I wish things were different. So do I said, feeling a deep sense of loss. But maybe it's best if we go our separate ways. Part 7. Moving on. Breaking up with Isabella was one of the hardest things I've ever done. For a long time, I felt lost. and heartbroken. But as time went on, I began to heal. I focused on myself, on rebuilding my life and finding happiness again. I reconnected with friends, took up new hobbies, and even started dating again. It wasn't easy, but it was a necessary part of moving on. I learned a lot about myself during that time, about what I wanted in a relationship and what I was willing to compromise on. Eventually, I found someone new, someone who shared my values and who I could trust completely. It took time, but I realized that the pain and heartbreak I had experienced with Isabella had made me stronger and more resilient. Looking back, I can see that the pandemic and the challenges it brought were a test of our relationship. And while we didn't pass that test, I learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and what it means to truly be there for someone. Isabella and I have since gone our separate ways, and I hope she has found happiness and fulfillment in her own life. As for me, I've found peace and contentment, knowing that I stayed true to myself and my values, even in the face of heartbreak. You're ready for the second story. My parents sold our house when me turned 18, leaving him homeless so they could travel. But 3 years later, their son became a millionaire, and they asked him to forgive them for what they had done. Part 1. The background introduction to the family dynamics. My parents, Elizabeth and Robert, were the epitome of loving grandparents. They had always been there for me, guiding me through life's ups and downs with unwavering support. When my son David was born, they immediately fell in love with him. David was their only grandchild, and they spoiled him with affection and attention. Every weekend, the house was filled with the aroma of my mother's famous chocolate chip cookies and the sound of my father's hearty laughter as he played games with David. David was a bright and curious child, always eager to learn and explore. His bond with his grandparents was special. They would take him to the park, teach him about gardening, and tell him stories of their youth. I often found myself smiling as I watched them together, grateful for the love that surrounded us. However, as David grew older, my parents began to talk more about their unfulfilled dreams. They had always wanted to travel the world, to see the places they had only read about in books. My father would often show us pictures of far-off lands, his eyes lighting up with excitement. My mother, too, shared his passion for travel, but their responsibilities had always kept them grounded. The protagonist's life situation. Life had not been easy for me. After my husband passed away unexpectedly, I was left to raise David on my own. Balancing work and parenting was a constant struggle. My job at the local grocery store barely paid the bills, and I often found myself lying awake at night, worrying about our future. My parents' support was a lifeline. They helped with David, took care of household chores, and provided emotional support when I needed it most. Despite the financial difficulties, our home was filled with love and laughter. The small, cozy house where we lived was a sanctuary. It was where David took his first steps, where we celebrated birthdays and holidays, and where we found comfort in each other's company. But as my parents' desire to travel grew stronger, the thought of losing our home filled me with dread. Part 2. The turning point. The son's 18th birthday. David's 18th birthday was a day of mixed emotions. We had a small party with close friends and family. The living room was decorated with balloons and streamers, and the table was laden with homemade treats. David beamed with happiness as he opened his gifts, his eyes sparkling with excitement. It was a joyous occasion, but an underlying tension loomed over us. After the guests had left, my parents asked to speak with me privately. We sat in the living room, the remnants of the celebration still around us. My father took a deep breath and looked at me with a seriousness that sent a shiver down my spine. "We've decided to sell the house," he said bluntly. My heart skipped a beat. "What? Why now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've waited long enough," my mother said softly, her voice trembling. "We want to travel, to see the world while we still can. It's now or never." I felt a wave of anger and disbelief wash over me. "But where will David and I go? This is our home." "We've thought about this," my father said, trying to sound reassuring. "We'll give you some money from the sale. It should be enough to get you started somewhere else." David, who had overheard the conversation, stepped in, his face flushed with anger. "So you're just going to leave us homeless so you can have your adventure? How could you do this to us?" The room fell silent. My parents tried to explain their decision, but the hurt in David's eyes was undeniable. That night, as we packed our belongings, the weight of betrayal hung heavy in the air. I could see the pain in David's eyes, and it broke my heart. My parents proceeded with the sale of the house, and we had no choice but to find a new place to live. They assured us that the money they would give us would be enough to start anew, but it was little consolation. The sense of security and stability we had taken for granted was gone. David tried to stay strong, but I could see the impact the decision had on him. He had always been a resilient and optimistic young man, but this betrayal shook him to his core. As we moved from one temporary shelter to another, I saw the light in his eyes dim. Part 3. The struggle. Adjusting to the new reality. Finding a new place to live was harder than I had imagined. The money my parents gave us barely covered the essentials, and affordable housing was scarce. We ended up in a small rundown apartment in a less than ideal neighborhood. The walls were thin, and the sounds of the city invaded our space, making it hard to find peace. David took it upon himself to help as much as he could. He picked up odd jobs, doing everything from mowing lawns to delivering newspapers. Despite the challenges, he remained determined to make the best of our situation. He often reassured me, saying, "We'll get through this, Mom. We always do." But the reality of our situation weighed heavily on both of us. The constant moving, the uncertainty, and the financial strain took a toll. There were nights when I would find David sitting by the window, staring out into the darkness, lost in thought. It broke my heart to see him like this, but I knew we had to keep pushing forward. As time passed, we slowly began to find our footing. I managed to secure a more stable job, and David continued to excel in his studies. He was determined to make something of himself, not just for his own sake, but for mine as well. His dream of creating a better life for us kept him motivated, even in the darkest times. David had always been passionate about technology. He spent countless hours teaching himself to code, often staying up late into the night working on various projects. He had a natural talent for it, and his dedication was unwavering. One day, David came to me with an idea. He wanted to create an app that could help people manage their finances more effectively. "Mom, I know this sounds crazy, but I believe in this idea. I just need your support," he said, his eyes filled with determination. I had my doubts, but seeing his passion and drive, I couldn't say no. We pooled together what little savings we had, and David began working on his project in earnest. The initial months were tough. There were moments of doubt, setbacks, and financial strain. But David persevered, and his hard work began to pay off. Part 4. The Rise to Success. David's app, which he named Budget Buddy, started to gain traction. He spent countless hours coding, testing, and refining the app, determined to make it a success. His dedication was inspiring, and I did my best to support him in any way I could. One day, David received an email that changed everything. A major investor had taken notice of his app and was interested in a meeting. The investor, Mr. Thompson, saw the potential in Budget Buddy and believed it could revolutionize the way people manage their finances. The meeting was a nerve-wracking experience. David and I sat across from Mr. Thompson in a sleek conference room, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. David presented his idea with confidence, outlining his vision and the impact Budget Buddy could have. Mr. Thompson listened intently, occasionally nodding in agreement. When David finished, there was a moment of silence before Mr. Thompson spoke. "David, I believe in your idea. I'm willing to invest in Budget Buddy and help you take it to the next level." David's face lit up with a mixture of relief and excitement. This was the breakthrough we had been praying for. With Mr. Thompson's investment, David was able to hire a small team and further develop the app. The initial challenges were daunting, but David's determination and leadership kept the team focused. The road to becoming a millionaire. As Budget Buddy grew in popularity, so did our financial stability. The app became a household name, praised for its user-friendly interface and innovative features. David's hard work and perseverance had paid off, and he was hailed as a young entrepreneurial genius. Our lives transformed dramatically. We moved into a comfortable home far from the rundown apartment we had once lived in. The financial strain that had once overshadowed our days was lifted, and for the first time in years, we could breathe easily. David's success was not just a personal triumph, it was a testament to his resilience and hard work. He had risen from the ashes of our struggles and built a life of abundance and opportunity. I couldn't have been prouder of him. Part 5. The Reconciliation. 3 years after they sold the house, my parents returned. Their travels had not gone as planned. They had faced financial difficulties and had come to realize the magnitude of their mistake. They were broke, tired, and filled with regret. They reached out to me asking for a meeting. I was hesitant, the wound of their betrayal still fresh in my mind. But David encouraged me to hear them out. We met at a local CAF GC. My parents looked older, more worn out than I remembered. They apologized profusely, tears streaming down their faces. "We were wrong," my mother said, her voice breaking. "We never should have put our dreams above your well-being. Please, can you forgive us?" I looked at David, who nodded encouragingly. Despite everything, he had always believed in forgiveness and second chances. I took a deep breath, the anger and hurt slowly melting away. "It's not easy to forget what happened," I said, my voice steady. "But I can see that you're truly sorry. I forgive you." The relief on their faces was palpable. It was the beginning of a long healing process, but it was a step towards rebuilding our family bond. Part 6. The conclusion. Reflecting on our journey, I realized how far we had come. The struggles we faced had strengthened our bond, and David's success was a testament to our resilience. My parents had learned from their mistakes, and we were slowly mending our relationship. David's business continued to thrive, and he often spoke about expanding it to help others in need. Our family had grown stronger, and we faced the future with hope and optimism. Through the trials and tribulations, we had learned the true meaning of family, forgiveness, and the power of perseverance. Our journey was far from over, but we were ready to face whatever came our way, together.